Just when we thought the transfer rumors were cooling off a bit for IU, suddenly out of nowhere, the Hoosiers are a finalist for one of the top players in the portal.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Hoosiers, your one and only daily one-stop shop for everything IU athletics. I'm your host, as always, Jacob. Want to thank you guys for making us your first listen, your first watch every day, whatever it may be. We hadn't talked a ton about transfer rumors this week, certainly as opposed to recent weeks, because we thought things were cooling off. But out of nowhere on Tuesday, the Hoosiers are not just linked, but a finalist for one of the top players in the portal, Jalen DeLoach, who is a transfer from VCU. Not a name we have mentioned on this podcast before. Not a name that had really been discussed a lot before. That IU had reached out, obviously, but things moved so fast in the portal that his name just kind of got brushed over. He announces on Twitter on Tuesday his top 6 schools. IU is among them, and I know that this came as a surprise to me. He earnestly is one of the top big man in the portal. His final 6 schools are the Hoosiers, obviously, Florida State, San Diego State, VCU. He potentially might return, Miami, and Penn State. I think this how quickly the portal moves, and just because IU isn't linked to people or there might not be rumors about them, that doesn't mean they're not doing work. But DeLoach is looking to take a visit to these schools. This isn't something that's going to play out quickly. While the news of him considering IU kind of came out of nowhere, this is gonna be a process that he's gonna go through. He talked to 247 Sports, said, quote, "My timeline is looking like the end of April or early May in terms of making a decision. I'm looking to get all my visits in. Then after that, I'll make a choice." Now, IU is the only visit he has scheduled so far. They're going to get the first crack at him. I don't know if that's good thing, bad thing. In my mind, I feel like it's probably better to go last because you have the kind of lasting impression. But if you're not going to go last, I think going first and making the first impression might be the right move here. He will be on campus April 14th. He talked about each of his final 6 schools. Here's what he said about IU. Coach Woodson is a great coach, and Indiana is the mecca of basketball. With Coach Woodson coaching in the NBA, I know he knows what it takes to get to the next level. So who is DeLoach? Because honestly, I'm not even going to pretend to lie. I didn't know anything about him. There's a lot of these transfer guys I don't know about, and I'm learning on the fly, and I think we all had to learn on the fly on Tuesday. Last year for VCU, he played 34 games, started 32 of them, played 24 minutes per game. He's listed as a forward, and we're going to talk about this. He played center last year. He averaged 9.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, 1.4 blocks. He did not shoot a three-pointer, has not shot a three-pointer in his 2 seasons. He did shoot 56.2% from the field. He is a 58% free throw shooter last season, and that was a drastic improvement. His freshman year, he went 10 of 33 at the line. So for his career, he's shooting 52% from the free throw line. Now, that being said, last year he was 3rd team all-conference with VCU. And like I said, while he's listed as a forward and at 6'9", I think a lot of us thought he might be kind of a stretch 4 or maybe a wing. He is someone that played as a center last year. Evan Mia, the place we routinely reference. If you first look at what his role was classified as last year, and we've discussed this before, they grade it 1 to 5. where if you're a 1.3, you played mainly point guard, but a little bit of shooting guard. If you're a 4.7, you played as a center, but maybe a little bit as a power forward. You get the idea. DeLoach is just a 5, just straight 5. He only played center last year. His role was as someone that was more of a receiver than creator. He didn't create a lot of offense for himself, but he wasn't someone that solely relied on someone else to set him up for baskets. Somewhere in the middle of that, a little bit more towards a receiver, but he's a big man who played center. He isn't going to stretch the floor. That doesn't mean he's not. I think he has some athleticism to him. And look, I'm basing this a lot off what I've kind of read and seen very quickly. We don't have a huge scouting report on him because, again, nobody really anticipated this. What I do know is he was a very impactful player last year. In terms of their Bayesian performance rating, which is their designed just kind of number to classify how good a player is. They had him as the second best player on VCU behind Adrian Baldwin last season, easily their best defender last year. And if you look at their transfer portal ratings, they project out to the 2024 season using that same formula algorithm. Based on that, he is the 23rd best target or player in the transfer portal. Hunter Dickinson's number 1. Caden Shedrick is number 3. But of the names IU's been linked to, only Shedrick is above him right now. DeLoach is 23rd. And when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, he is one of the top players in the portal. He is the best power forward defensively. The only people that rank above him are 4 centers, a shooting guard, and DeLoach. Shedrick, again, one of those ranking above him, but he is 6th in terms of defensive BPR, Bayesian performance rating, defensive BPR. So IU is losing a lot defensively. With Race gone, with Trayce gone, you can see why he would appeal to Mike Woodson as someone who could make an impact next year. That's not to say he's not going to make an impact offensively. That's just to say his main value is going to come on the defensive end. He's still going to be a good defensive player, offensive player, but he is someone who is going to play as an undersized center at 6'9", athletic, good wingspan, just someone that can play a little more open. And we talked a lot about that. IU didn't have a ton of athletes last year, and they struggled with that in terms of the front court and whatnot. DeLoach looks like someone that can help that, just getting athletes on the court. And IU needs that. IU needs more athleticism on the court. So we'll continue to look into him, read more about him. Again, this is going to be a long process. We'll have a month, it sounds like, to learn more about DeLoach, but the Hoosiers are active. Even if you don't think they're active, they are active, and they are busy, and they are making moves. DeLoach on Tuesday, the surest sign of that. The other big news on Tuesday is that Trayce Jackson-Davis entered the NBA draft. It was not a shock. He said he was leaving, but this is the official end of that. So we'll talk a little bit about that and look at some mock drafts to see where he is projected to go in June. Before we do that, the NBA playoffs are almost here, guys. And now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to three-pointers made. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Big shout out to you guys for making us your first listen every single day. Big thanks to you guys who continue to watch us on YouTube. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're real close to 900. Let's keep pushing. If you guys are watching, be sure to subscribe. We're going to have transfer coverage throughout the next month. Clearly, it's still going to go on for there. We have plenty of stuff to talk to you guys about throughout the next month. So we will be here. Make sure you guys are here as well by subscribing. Also on Twitter on Tuesday. Hey, that's a new place to be. No more press releases. It's Twitter releases. Trayce Jackson-Davis announced that he was entering the 2023 NBA draft. He was hiring an agent. There is no chance of him coming back. In the past, he had entered the draft, but without hiring an agent, which meant he could come back. He's signing with Excel Sports Management. He has said he's foregoing his COVID year. It's done, dusted. There is no coming back for Trayce with this one. Again, not something that was a surprise. He started talking at the beginning of the year about this being his final year. He confirmed it later on in the year. He wasn't coming back. That he had treated this year as his last year. And look, he played his way into what is probably going to be a big payday. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But what he leaves behind is one of the greatest legacies of any IU player ever, at least individually. The team success never came there. I'm not going to fault him for what happened under Archie. Trayce did everything he could in spite of having Archie there. He tried his damnedest these last 2 years, and especially this year, to will IU on, but it was a flawed IU team both years that, you could not fault Trayce for what happened to those teams, but he is someone that, especially this season, it's going to go down as one of the best seasons a player has ever had. His career is one of the greatest an IU player has ever had. He's number 1 in rebounds, number 1 in blocks, number 3 in points. We're going to talk a lot more about him, what the legacy he will leave in Bloomington. Once we do player reviews and kind of recap the season, that'll probably start next week. But there are very, very few players who have worn the cream and crimson, who have worn the candy stripes that are better, that have left better legacies, had better careers in Bloomington other than Trayce. So hats off to him for everything he did for the program to bring them back to national relevancy the last 2 seasons, to set an example of what it's going to take to be successful at this level. Incredible. His impact is going to be felt on the program for many years moving forward. And incredible, again, I keep using the word legacy, but that's the word that kind of comes to mind when thinking about Trayce and IU and Bloomington, the legacy he has left. We're going to talk later this week, probably tomorrow's episode, about Trayce as a draft prospect. We did that last year. We'll talk about what changed over these last 12 months, basically. But what I wanted to do is take a look at just some mock drafts with the season coming to an end Monday night. Mock drafts came out, plenty of them on Tuesday. A handful of them have Trayce Jackson-Davis in the first round. Sporting News, the very maybe unfortunately named Kyle Irving. I sympathize with him and having a name that everyone is going to discuss, especially I'm sure that man has had a lot of people talk about his name in the last however many months with Kyrie's nonsense. But he mocked Trayce Jackson-Davis to the Hornets with the number 28 pick. That wouldn't be a great fit. The Hornets have a couple centers already. I don't know how that would work, but that he's kind of in this range. In every mock draft on big boards, he's in this late first round, maybe early second round range. That's where you're going to be looking at for Trayce. The 27, 28, the Pacers at 29 will be interesting. Again, they have some centers. I don't know how much sense it would make, but man, how much fun would it be for Trayce to be Mr. Basketball, go have the career he had at IU, and then go to the Pacers. I mean, in terms of a story, it would be great. In terms of him excelling at the next level, I don't know that that would be the best situation for him. The Hornets as well, they have some centers. That's where the position Trayce is going to have to play. I don't, unless he has a 3-point shot that he just refused to show at Indiana, he's not going to be able to play power forward. So he's going to have to play center, and Charlotte may not be the best place for that. Yahoo Sports did their mock draft, and they had Trayce Jackson-Davis going 27th to the Jazz. That would make a little more sense. The Jazz are set for a rebuild, and they have young pieces. Trayce could come in and be part of that rebuild and part of that next generation. They have some interesting front court pieces. Walker Kessler was one of the best defensive rookies. I mean, he was really one of the better defensive players last year. Well, I guess this season. His season sounds like it's done, but Trayce playing next to him would be interesting. Lauri Markkanen is a forward that has really blossomed into something special, and he has the ability to stretch the floor, so that would help the fact that Trayce probably isn't going to be able to stretch the floor. There's some interesting pieces. Utah, I think, would be a good landing spot for him. They have the number 27 pick, so that's right there in that range. That's going to be, I think, a common place that you see him in mock drafts. And again, like I said, for a number of reasons, it would make sense as a fit. The Ringer, Kevin O'Connor, released a mock draft on Tuesday. He did not have Trayce Jackson-Davis being drafted. He only did the first round. But that being said, he has Trayce Jackson-Davis 31st on his big board. There are 30 teams in the NBA or in the first round. There's 30 picks in the first round. So again, he's right there. He's right there at the edge of that in terms of being drafted. That's going to be the range he's at. Sam Vecini of The Athletic did his mock draft last week. The 28th is when that came out. He's a little bit lower on Trayce. 39th to the Wizards is where he has Trayce going. That seems like more towards the floor of what we're going to be looking at. But the Wizards are a team that are kind of in a constant state of rebuilding. I don't really know what the Wizards are doing, but there would be minutes open to Trayce, and he could come in and I think contribute early on with the Wizards. The problem is, as I said, the Wizards are always kind of constantly rebuilding. So I don't know big picture if that's a great fit for him. It worked for Thomas Bryant. He went to Washington, excelled, and was able to carve out a role in the NBA. So maybe they can replicate that with Trayce. But that's what we're kind of looking at, somewhere from as high as 27, maybe a little bit higher, but 25 might be about, I think, as high as he could realistically go to. I don't know that he would drop much lower than like 39, 40, somewhere around there. I would be surprised if he even dropped that low. So that's what we're looking at. And look, compare this to last year. We're having these discussions. Most mock drafts did not have him even being drafted. So this is a huge jump. Maybe he's not a guaranteed first-round pick. There's a lot of money that comes with being a first-round pick, mainly guaranteed money that comes with being a first-round pick. The contract's longer. So there's an incentive to be picked in the first round financially, but he's going to have a future in the NBA. And I think that's what matters most. That's why he left, to be quite frank. That's his dream. He's going to be picked. No need to risk any more of that. Go make your money in the NBA. Let's wrap up with the last piece of news that came out on Tuesday. Some scheduling news for the 2023-24 season for IU basketball. We'll discuss where the Hoosiers are going to be playing, who they're going to be playing against, and take a look at what we know about the schedule moving forward. We'll do all that here in just a moment. So the Hoosiers, I mean, the season's done with. They immediately announced on Tuesday that they would be taking part in the Empire Classic at Madison Square Garden with the defending national champions. UConn won the title. Kind of thought they would on Monday. They ran riot through everybody. So UConn is in that. Texas is in that, an Elite Eight team. And somehow Louisville is finesse their way into this field. I mean, I don't think Louisville's going to be as bad as they were last year, but boy, what a finesse. Those are UConn's obviously an elite program right now. Texas was, I mean, by name an elite program. IU is kind of maybe a step below them. Louisville's many steps below them, but this will take place November 19th and 20th. Look, even if Louisville is in this and it's whatever nonsense, these are the marquee games against the marquee programs that you want to be playing. This is the company IU wants to be in. We talked a lot about the Crossroads Classic. It's done. It's not coming back. It does not benefit IU to play in that. And this doesn't directly interfere with that, but when you compare playing Butler and Notre Dame, neither who are particularly notable programs nationally, versus playing UConn and Texas, this is why you get out of the Crossroads and you start scheduling games like this. What it does replace is the game that IU played against Miami of Ohio in Gainbridge Fieldhouse this past year. So in terms of that spot on the calendar, that's what it will be replacing. When you look at the schedule for the Hoosiers, all we know right now is that they will have this. We don't know who they're going to play specifically in this. They'll play a semifinal, and then they'll play a final, and then there'll also be a third place game. So they're going to get 2 games. They're going to play 2 of these 3 teams. I mean, I would rather play UConn and Texas, but I mean, Louisville is probably going to be the easier matchup unless they do some kind of incredible team building in the transfer portal. That's probably the easier of the matchups, but I'm not going to complain regardless. So we know we have this game. We also know we're going to play Kansas at home, the home and home with them. We obviously played there and got embarrassed last year. We will play them at home. I think it's right around the same time. And I think that specifically is when IU would have played in the Crossroads Classic. Something is going to replace the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Not specifically a challenge, but there's going to have to be a marquee game that IU is going to have to add to the schedule unless the Big Ten has something cooking behind the scenes. I don't know what it would be. You're not going to have this Big Ten ACC Challenge. The Gavitt games exist, kind of. This sounds like it might be the last year for it. And if IU's playing UConn in the Empire Classic, they're probably not going to be playing UConn in the Gavitt games. And IU was always one of the marquee teams to play in the Gavitt games. Also, I mean, there's a lot of the Gavitt games don't really make any sense. Like, you're not even guaranteed to play in them. Get rid of it just because it's confusing. So you're not going to play them. You're not, I mean, do you want to play a Big 10, Big 12 series? The Big 12 and SEC have something, I believe. So, like, you're going to play the Pac-12? I mean, schedule UCLA and USC since they're going to be conference opponents here soon. I don't think there's going to be any sort of challenge, which means IU has a marquee game, an opening where they typically play a marquee game on the calendar. We'll see if they try to replace that. Maybe they just schedule an ACC team themselves and cut out the middleman. I don't know, but all we know right now is that we have the Empire Classic. It's going to be at Madison Square Garden. I didn't even mention that. That as well. The stage it's going to be played on matters as well for recruiting, the transfer portal, high school recruits, all of that. So you have that. You have the Kansas game. That's all we know. You could play a Gavitt games. IU played in them last year. I don't really know if IU's going to play in them again this year. I don't really know the rules on that. And it doesn't sound like anybody really knows the rules on that. So there's not a lot known about IU's schedule yet. We'll piece that together as the summer goes along. Thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow to talk about Jalen, Trayce, and Grace Berger as draft prospects. We have a special guest coming on to do that. For your second listen, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know. The season is done. They give you a recap of the national title game. And look, they have to deal with transfer portal madness just as much as we do. So there's no rest for the weary for them. Big shout out to you guys. Again, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and review, all that great stuff. Appreciate all the support you guys continue to give us. As always, though, guys, hope you all have a great Wednesday. Get through hump day. And most importantly, LEO.